thank you all so much for having me today. I really appreciate this opportunity to come speak to you about my career, essentially, and also my career pathway. Hopefully this will speak to some of you, but also maybe give you some insight into another avenue that you can go in science, and that is teaching. Like many of you, I was very passionate about research. I love science, and I'm going to talk about my journey in a little bit here in a second. But there's a couple things that I encountered and kind of learned about myself during my period of time in which I was a graduate student that kind of made me track in this direction. So what I wanted to do is just kind of speak to you about that, what I like about teaching, what it's like to teach, and then some opportunities that if any of you are interested in getting experience teaching, can have here across the street at the medical center, but also at Rice University. And so again, even if you're not thinking about going into teaching as a career, if you do continue on as a research scientist in any capacity, you will have to teach people at some point in time. You will have students that will be learning from you. You will have graduate students that will be learning from you. If you are a PI of a lab, depending on the institution where you work, you will be expected to teach. The faculty in my department, the bioscience department, do teach one class a year. So at some point, if you do stay in the science space, teaching is going to be a component of your life. So even if you don't want to do it full time, you might want to dabble in it a little bit just to get that experience. And I will give you, again, at the end of my talk, some opportunities where you can maybe gain that experience or learn a little bit more about what it's like. So yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. I am an assistant teaching professor, and I'll kind of explain what that is in a little bit. But I also am the director of the Lynn Lowry Arboretum at Rice, which if you're not familiar with that space, Rice is the Arboretum. So we're very unique in that our entire 300-acre campus is a certified Arboretum, and I'm now in charge of it. So, and this is on top of my full-time teaching job. So I just like to stay out of trouble. And one of the ways I stay out of trouble is I stay very busy. So I do realize that my talk is maybe not kind of the normal research talk that you might get. So I figured that I would also start this a little bit more unconventionally, just to give you a little experience of what a lot of us teaching faculty do with our classes. So just bear with me. I'm going to ask y'all to participate in a little exercise for the next couple of minutes. So this is something that I often do in all of my courses, just to give students the opportunity to meet each other, because often just like meeting the person next to you leads to significant collaboration. I've actually had students with the exact same name in the exact same major sitting next to each other in the same class, and they did not know each other. And after meeting each other, we're BFF for their own out. So I wanted to do this exercise with y'all just for a couple of minutes. So this is what I want you to do. Break out of your molds. I know you're probably sitting next to someone you know, but I would like you to turn either to look in front of you or behind you to someone you might not know and introduce yourself. Ask the person their name, what their primary research area is, and share a little something about yourself to that person, because you never know. You might be sitting next to your doppelganger and you just don't know it. Here's a couple question prompts. Favorite restaurant, favorite musician, least favorite building in the medical center. Everybody's got that building. I'm going to give y'all a minute to chat with each other, and then we'll reconvene. All right. Everybody get a chance to chat a little bit? All right, I'm going to use my teacher voice to bring you back around. So thank you for being so active. Sometimes I really have to force my undergraduates to talk to each other. But I appreciate the conversation. So did anybody meet their doppelganger? Anybody with the same name sitting next to each other? This has happened to me actually twice. It's crazy. Anybody agree on a favorite restaurant? Like maybe even a favorite type of restaurant? Where are my Indian food lovers out there? I love Indian food. Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. That is where I'm going after this. I'm so excited. I'm going to give you some dosa. Anybody agree on their least favorite medical center building? There's quite a few over there. I always get lost in the medical center, which is why I'm just like, oh, medical center, you're such a pain. Well, thank you. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an exercise in one of the things that those of us that are in the teaching profession like to do. Collaboration is key. It's also key in the research space as well. But forming a community in a classroom, I have learned time and time again, goes a long way to effective teaching and also getting students really excited about science. Because if you can't, if a student is nervous about coming to you, or but depending on their background, maybe talking to the professor isn't something that they're very comfortable with, they talk to their colleagues, right? So it's really important to build those relationships really early with students. If you want everybody to succeed. So I just wanted to explain to you or share with you a little bit about my journey into getting into teaching, because it wasn't always obvious to me that this is what I wanted to do. But one of the reasons I truly love what I am doing right now is because I absolutely love biology. And I actually had a very difficult time in my undergraduate career and also my graduate career deciding what it was that I wanted to do. I was really into ecology. I was really into marine biology. I was really interested in viruses. I was really interested in the microbes. Like, all of it was so interesting to me that I just finally had to decide on something, because you got to choose a major path, right, as an undergrad. And in graduate school, you've got to join a lab and you have to work on a project if you're going to get out. So one of the aspects of teaching that I think is so incredible that I have really embraced is the fact that when you teach, you get to talk about everything. You get to experience that breadth of biology. So just to give you a little taste of that, I just wanted to share with you some of the courses that I have taught. So prior to coming to Rice, I taught at Houston Community College for 7 years. And at HCC, I taught these very mainstay courses, Biology 1, Biology 2, and microbiology. That is not what I got my degree in. I don't have a degree in microbiology, but I got to teach a microbiology course, which I really loved because I love those organisms and they're really fun to talk about. Now here at Rice, I teach an even greater diversity of courses. I have taught immunology. I'm teaching plant diversity right now. That's where I just ran from. Conservation biology, experimental lab courses, and I also been able to develop my own course where students learn to teach from each other, and then they teach to their colleagues at community college, which that was my tree stem course. And that was the photo you saw on my first slide, where all the students kind of working together for that course. So this really suits my insatiable interest in biology, because I literally get to dabble in all of these subjects. I'm not stuck in just one type of subject where I am the content master. One caveat to this is that I don't have maybe a deep dive understanding into the nuances of all of these fields. I have a pretty good surface and kind of mid-level understanding, but this is one thing that people kind of don't realize is that, yes, those of us that teach, we know a lot about our graduate work. Like I did a deep dive into metabotropic glutamate receptor signaling, but I don't get into that depth in all of these subjects. I know a little bit about a lot of things, but not a lot about one particular thing, which for some people that's aggravating. But of course, in the subjects that I really enjoy, I probe a little bit deeper. So how did I get here? I started out really wanting to be a researcher. And this is my sexy model organism that I worked on. So I studied a couple of things in Drosophila. I studied transcription factors that were regulating proprioception in Drosophila. So we were trying to see how mutations in those transcription factors altered the way that these organisms sense their environment, which at the time was really important to NASA because they were going to send people into space long term. And then the other big project I was working on was the downstream signaling components of metabotropic glutamate receptors in the Drosophila motor neuron, because we were kind of looking at the motor neuron as a proxy for studying autism in the human brain. So I was really into this. I really enjoyed working on fruit flies. I dissected a lot of fruit fly brains and a lot of fruit fly maggots. So I'm very good at that. If anybody needs a maggot dissected, I'm very good at that. So why would I leave something so sexy? Well, during my period of time in graduate school, I had a couple opportunities to guest lecture in a few courses that were being offered. And also what I really recognized in myself that I truly enjoyed about my work in the lab was working with the undergraduate students. I loved it when they came into the lab and had a bunch of questions and I could work with them. And if I didn't know the answer, we'd work together on the question. And I kind of realized kind of early on, I really like working with the people. The science is great, it's frustrating, but I really like working with the people. So I really started to think more critically, like, I like science, but I really like talking about science. And maybe that's something I need to look further into and more deeply into. So when I graduated, I did something really bizarre and everybody looked at me like I was totally crazy. And maybe I am totally crazy, but it led me to a decent job. So I'm happy that some craziness led me in the direction I needed to go. But after I left Rice, I decided not to do a kind of a standard postdoc. I went and worked at the Houston Zoo instead. So I had been volunteering at the zoo on the side just to get out of the lab because remember, I really loved biology. And I liked the molecular part, you know, pipetting an invisible fluid into another invisible fluid. That's great. But I also really like animals. I liked ecology. I like the outdoors. And so every other Saturday, I was actually volunteering at the Houston Zoo just to get outdoors and just get out of the lab for a minute. And during that time, I met a lot of people there. And when I graduated, I was actually interested in a postdoc in ecology and conservation. But everybody who was looking at my transcript or my CV was like, you're a molecular biologist. Why are you applying to work with turtles with me? And I'm like, because I want a different experience. So the Houston Zoo, because they knew me, took me on. And I worked at the Houston Zoo for almost 3 years in the Department of Conservation and Science, doing Houston toad, which is a critically endangered species here in the Houston area. Actually, it's not found here anymore. But I worked on the toad program and actually developed a system, which I'm very proud of, where we started to breed Houston toads in the wild. Houston toads collected from the wild in our facility, and we released the eggs back into the wild to protect the species. And to date, every year, the Houston Zoo is producing about 5 million eggs. So I'm really happy that I was on the ground floor of all of that. So during my time at the zoo, I also had an opportunity to be the president of a nonprofit organization called the Coastal Prairie Partnership. And here's where I truly started to think that I liked teaching, because the mainstay of this particular organization was to host outreach events, education events, and workshops for people to think about prairie conservation and restoration. And so I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed explaining kind of the science behind conservation and why we need to do conservation to people. So I was able to secure during this time, and I'll tell you just right now, and I'm sorry, all my friends who work at zoos who might be listening right now, you don't make a lot of money working at a zoo. And so I was trying to at least get a decent paycheck with this PhD that I had earned. And so an opportunity opened up where I was able to adjunct for a semester at Houston Community College. And that one semester turned into a full-time position there. And so that's where I got into Houston Community College and taught there for 7 years. So some of these pictures that you see across the bottom of the slide are some of the outreach events that I was holding with my Biology 2 courses, getting students outside, learning about the local environment. So 7 years later, my working and teaching at HCC got me back to Rice. And what's funny, and the reason that I stitched these photos together the way that I did, is that I've kind of come back full circle to the work I initially did with the Houston Toad program. The group of students that you see on the slide here are actually working on developing an eDNA, or an environmental DNA detection system to detect Houston toads in the wild, which this has not been developed for this species. And it would be a game changer for the species. So undergraduate students in our labs are actually doing authentic conservation work. So I've been able to bring my passion for conservation, my interest in molecular biology and teaching kind of back in this full circle. So one of the things that I wanted to also kind of relate to you all, and again, you might not be thinking about going into teaching full time, but I just wanted to make a connection or just explain to you what it's like to be a teaching faculty member. There are a lot of parallels between research faculty positions and teaching faculty positions. But of course, one of the main differences is teaching. So I mentioned in the bioscience program at Rice, the research faculty in that program teach 1 class a year. I teach 3 to 4 classes a semester. So the teaching load is much higher, but a lot of the other requirements of being a faculty member are very similar. So I just wanted to kind of explain that to you a little bit. And I've been really excited. I've been playing with Gemini image creation. So that's where a lot of my pictures are coming from. So you'll see like weird nuances because I haven't quite told it how to make these images right. But I'm trying to embrace AI. So you guys are the benefactors of that, I guess. So a lot of what I do in a week in my current position is a lot of class preparation. It actually requires quite a bit of outside work. You don't just walk into a classroom and start talking. There's a lot of preparation that goes into that. And depending on the type of class, there's more preparation. As you might imagine, immunology, I had 120 students in that class. It took a lot of prep because immunology is constantly changing, and I was trying to keep up on the newest and greatest information to share with my students. Some of my other courses, I don't have to prep as much. Like conservation biology is kind of, it's not a static field, but there's not as much prep that goes into that. We're messing with the environment. We need to protect it. That's pretty easy prep. So class prep is a lot of what I do. Of course, teaching is a lot of what I do. And what a lot of people don't realize that teaching faculty are also very, 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 very on the front lines I'm primarily responsible for is mentoring. Students go to the teaching faculty first because we are kind of the front line. They see us more. And that doesn't imply that they don't go to their research faculty member if they're working in their lab, but they see us. They take more classes with us. They come to office hours with us. We do a lot of mentoring. And this is something that I did not know getting into this profession. I have a lot of crying students that come to me in my office, not just to talk about their classes, but to talk about their lives. So it's a great part of the job, but it's also something that I didn't recognize I was going to be very, very like immersed in. Spent a lot of time with office hours, spent a tremendous amount of time grading, and also a lot of recommendation letters. Again, because you are the forward face of the institution, students come to you with a lot of recommendation requests, which always happy to provide, but they always ask all at the same time. So I appreciate the students that ask really early. But I do write, I've spent a lot of time writing rec letters. And just like the research faculty, we have a lot of meetings and we have a lot of service requirements. So y'all may or may not know this, but as faculty members, you have to not only do research, but there is service to the department and the institution that you must carry out. And it does take a lot of time. The teaching faculty also have those same requirements. So you're not just doing research, you know, you're not just working in your labs, but there's other elements of work that you have to do for your institutions as well. So if any of you are going that direction, different institutions do require different amounts of service. That's always something to ask in an interview and look into, just FYI. So I just wanted to mention that leaving or not being in a research position doesn't mean you will never, ever do research again. I and most of my colleagues do dabble in research. We do it at the undergraduate level. Sometimes there is partnership with graduate students and postdocs and actually research faculty. But this is one of the things that I really do like about my position is that I can have fun with research. I'm not worried about writing an R1 grant, or it doesn't have to turn into a publication. I can actually have fun. So I can ask really just fun, like esoteric questions and have an undergraduate student kind of work on that for me. So I have kind of 3 research projects that I dabble in. One of the research projects is very ecological. I have students that are actually collecting data for me to help with a big restoration effort that we're doing on Rice's campus to bring back a wetland and a prairie ecosystem, because that's what was historically on our campus before all the buildings were there. So we're trying to recapitulate some of those ecosystems back. So I have students that are helping me with that. And the students that I have shown on this slide are all students that have gone on to a professional program or are working on PhDs in restoration right now. So this was a really great experience for them. I also have a group of students that are working on surveying our campus arboretum, and this has been a lot of fun. And of course, I'm working with students on this eDNA detection project. So it's just really great that I can work with undergraduates to pursue their passion in science and research, but it's low stakes. You know, knowing if we don't publish anything, it's no big deal. They got some hands-on experience that they can maybe extrapolate or use in another laboratory situation. So teaching is not the end of research. It's actually kind of a beginning, and you can kind of explore a lot of fun avenues in research. So I just wanted to put a couple of like statements. There's a lot of misconceptions about teaching. And I think I just wanted to address some of them because I heard a lot of this when I was a graduate student about going into teaching instead of research. So I just wanted to address some of those misconceptions and just kind of explain to you clearly what this job is and what it is not. And then I'll take a minute to explain the different types of teaching, which might be of interest to you. So what teaching is challenging. It's not an easy solution. If you're maybe not happy with doing research, you're like, I'll just go into teaching. Yeah, you can go into teaching, but it's not just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to do this today. It's actually a little bit more complicated than that. It is a challenge, but I kind of like the challenge. I don't like easy things. I like challenging things. So it's definitely teaching keeps me on my toes. You have to be adaptable. It requires a significant commitment to mentorship. Again, I have lines of students coming into my office. And so you have to be prepared to want to work with human beings and all of their interesting problems that they bring with them. It's hard, but it's also kind of a joy helping people, young people find their way. You have to accept the fact that you don't know everything, and often students will call you out. I have been called out in class several times, and the first time it happened, it was absolutely humiliating, but you have to be able to be like, okay, you're right, I didn't know that. Thank you so much for like enlightening me. Let's have a conversation about that later. I'm gonna go look that up. So it is very humbling, And that's something else that I really had to kind of get used to, especially when I write students. So like, I read a paper. I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. And when did it come out? Oh, yesterday? Oh God, okay, yeah. I probably am not up on that. It also requires facing new technology. I am a bit of a Luddite, and I was like really shuffling my feet into embracing AI, but all of my students have AI. I better use it. I better get there. So that's why I've kind of made all these images with AI. And like I mentioned before, it requires service. So you're not just going and teaching a class and going home. You have a lot of other things that you must do. So what teaching is not easy. And like I mentioned, it's not something you can just do. If any of you are like thinking about teaching at all, find a mentor, find someone to talk to about this, because that will help you out tremendously. You won't struggle in the beginning, which I had some struggle. And so I finally found some good mentors that could help me find my way. It's never just about the content. We are subject matter experts, right? We know science really well. That's just a small fraction of what teaching is. A lot of it is, okay, I'm an expert. I have a whole room full of students with different backgrounds, from different places, from different cultures, that are all going to need this information presented to them in a different way. And you have to navigate that, because at the end of the day, you want all your students to be successful. So managing people, their expectations, is actually one of the most challenging but great parts of the job. The content's the easy part. Everything else, that's where teaching really is. Not always reproducible, which I know all of y'all doing research can understand what that means. What works in one semester doesn't work in another semester. And what works with one audience doesn't work with another audience. You're always trying to reassess how you did, pivot, and improve on your work. And it's definitely not a 9-to-5 job. I take my work home with me all the time and all the weekends. But the caveat to that is we do get lots of time off. So we can reset and then do it again. So just real quick, I wanted to confirm to all of you, if you are a good scientist, you can be a great teacher, or educator in some form of education if you choose to go in that pathway. A lot of the skills that we have learned as scientists are completely translatable to teaching. We have to troubleshoot and tweak things all of the time to get them to work. You're constantly doing that as an educator. You have to explain complex concepts to people that have no idea what the words you are using are, right? So learned this the hard way in immunology the first time I taught it, that, halfway through the semester, I had a student come up to me, he's like, I have no idea some of these words you're using. I'm like, oh gosh, I am so sorry. Let me revisit some of that. You're always juggling this concept of, is this good enough, right? Can I get better results? So there's always kind of that back and forth element of improving the work that you're doing. You're constantly reading and writing, you're applying new ideas and techniques, collaboration. So if I put at the top of this is what it takes to be a scientist, it would be the same, right? So if you've been thinking about teaching and you're hesitant because you don't think you have the right skill set, you do. You absolutely 100% do, because this is what we do every day when we walk in that lab, right? And the other big part of this, and I left this for last, is we also know when to get help. Like, we're all kind of self-starters. That's why we're here, right? That's why we do science. And we try to figure things out on our own. But all of us know at some point when we need someone else's assistance. That's very key for a teaching profession as well. So some additional considerations doing teaching as a career is that we actually have, the teaching faculty actually have a really great work-life balance. Not in the first couple of years, because you've got to get your feet on the ground. You've got to get your classes put together. So the first 3 years, I'm not going to lie, are hectic. But once that 3-year mark is made, you're good. We have a good work-life balance. All of my faculty friends who are teaching faculty, they go home to their kids. They spend time with their children on the weekend. They go on vacation. They don't have to worry about their cell culture dying over the weekend or collecting virgins in the morning, which I'm glad I can say that to y'all and you don't look at me weird. You know what I'm talking about. When I tell my family that, they're like, what? The work-life balance is phenomenal. It's actually kind of a nice, regular type of job. Yes, we do work on the weekends grading, but you can set that grading aside and have a couple hours with your kids and not have to worry about running to the lab to check on something or do something. It is a secure job. One thing I will say is that not all teaching faculty positions come with tenure. Some institutions do offer tenure to their teaching faculty. My institution, Rice, does not. However, they have a promotion system, which is very similar to tenure for the teaching faculty. So I'm assistant teaching faculty. I'm actually up for promotion this year. If I get it, I'll go up to associate. And then in 3 to 5 years after that, I can be a full professor. And it's hard to get rid of us at that point. So there is job security in teaching, unlike some science positions out there. You have a very flexible schedule. So if you do have a family, you can work your teaching schedule around needing to take care of your children. If you need to bug out and go pick them up from school, you can choose courses or set your course time so you can make that time. Again, that's not something you can always do in the research space, right? The research kind of guides your time. In the teaching space, you guide your time. So it does offer more flexibility. Also, holidays and summers are yours. So a lot of teaching faculty do work during the summer. I don't. I worry about Arboretum stuff in the summer, which is a terrible time to think about Arboretum because it's very, very hot. But you can take that time off and you can do other things. You can travel. You can go do research. And some of our teaching faculty do research. They still have partnerships with their postdoctoral lab that they go and do things over the summer. Holidays, we also get all the holidays. So again, it's a very much more flexible job than being in the research space. But one thing I will say is we do not get paid at the same rate. Okay, so you don't, and I'm sure I don't need to tell y'all that you don't go into teaching for the money. I make a decent salary. My colleagues make a decent salary. You can feed yourself and have a home and a car and all that good stuff. But the pay scale is not at the same rate as if you are at an industry or a research faculty. I do not make as much as the research faculty do in the bioscience department. So I wanted to just give you a little bit of information about the different types of teaching, just so you recognize that there are different avenues to pursue. And again, I'll also make note of in some of these spaces, you don't have to be a full-time teaching faculty. And often some of these spaces, they take adjuncts. So you could actually be a researcher and adjunct at one of these institutions, or you're research faculty and what you're doing is teaching graduate students. So the three kind of main types of institutions where we would see the most teaching is community college, a four-year institution, or a graduate program only. Like Baylor College of Medicine doesn't have undergraduates, but they do have a graduate program. And their research faculty do teach the classes at BCM. So there are many commonalities between these different positions, and I put them in the middle of this Venn diagram. I was really excited. I haven't made a Venn diagram in a long time. I was like, yay. So all the class prep, assessment, the student mentorship, and of course teaching is collectively the same between these different institutions. But now things start to kind of change and shift. So in the community college space, you can literally start teaching at a community college with very little experience. And as an adjunct, you need no experience whatsoever. You can literally just say, hey, I've got a PhD or a master's degree. I want to teach micro. They're like, oh, come on in. Here's some materials. Go, there's your classroom. In the other spaces, a four-year institution or a place like Baylor, you need to have experience on your CV or they won't look at you. A lot of the courses that you teach at community college are kind of feed students into advanced programs like nursing. So my microbiology class was very geared towards getting students prepared for the NCLEX, which is an exam they have to take to get into nursing school. And so there's often more oversight of what you are teaching at a community college. You don't have as much academic freedom there. But if you're just starting out, that's actually really nice because people are like, this is what you teach. And so you don't have to like rethink the wheel or anything. So for institutions, you get a lot more kind of academic freedom and flexibility. You also get to teach more upper level classes. At the community college level, you're teaching freshmen and sophomores only. But a four-year institution, you can teach all the way up through graduate students in some courses, which is really exciting. One of the downsides I find with the four-year institutions is that the class sizes are much bigger. Community colleges are capped. So the biggest class I ever had at HCC was 24 students, which is an awesome number of students. At Rice, all the way up to 120. So it's the scale is much different. In graduate programs, a lot of these classes are very research focused. So you're not teaching basal information like you would at a community college or a four-year institution. So most of the students are reading scientific papers. So you're working with very advanced students, which there's pros and cons for that. Advanced that you don't have to go and re-explain what the words mean. But I don't know, I feel like I personally like guiding the students from the bottom up. I like helping in their understanding of science. So if you're more of like, I really want to talk about research and like the high level science, then teaching at a place like BCM is definitely the way to go. So one of the pros and cons of teaching at both community college and a four-year institution is that, again, like I mentioned, you're teaching the core concepts. So some of us have to brush off our old school biology and be like, okay, what are all the different organisms? Like, what are all the domains of life? And how do we break them down into kingdoms? But again, I really like that stuff. You're working with undergraduates. There's also some state oversight. If you're working at a public institution, Rice has a lot of flex, but the state does have some say as to what you teach, especially for a state-run community college. And I guess the two, some of the things that connect the four-year institutions and the graduate program, again, like I mentioned, are you're working with graduate students, and the majority of these students are what I call college ready. They're prepared. So at the community college level, a lot of these students are returning from having a career or from children, and often they are not ready for college. And so that's something that you have to work with in the classroom as well. So again, I know that was kind of like a lot of information, a big data dump, but I just wanted y'all to also recognize that there are different types of teaching out there too. So depending on where if you're thinking about teaching, this is something to think about, like how the type of content that you are the most comfortable with that you would want to explain to someone else. You want to digest and dissect a scientific paper with a group of students, or do you want to explain to them the difference between a prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell? So there's different avenues for that. All right, so here's the good stuff, and I think I'm on time. Yay. So say I've convinced you that you might want to get interested in some teaching, okay? You haven't walked out and come back with pitchforks yet, so either being polite or maybe you're a little interested. So let me give you some tips of what you could do if this is something that you're interested in or you want to know more. So the two main tips I can give you are explore different types of teaching and take a training program. And so that's very vague. So let me give you some specifics. So if you want to explore different types of teaching, one of the easiest things to do is ask your PI, hey, can I teach a class for you? And they'll be like, oh, yes, please. I would much rather be in my office writing that grant application than teaching today. So that is an easy ask. Get a mentor somebody new in your lab. That's also a very effective way to consider if you really like this whole idea of teaching. You can also volunteer to teach a workshop in your department. Departments are always kind of looking for things to get people together to learn and collaborate. So just offer hey, I can teach something on Drosophila melanogaster brain dissections. Most departments are like, okay, yeah, we have some money. We can help you put that together. The other thing you can do if you want a more formal segue into this is take a training program. And here are a couple of training programs, and I'm going to give you some more information about one of them here in a second. But Baylor College of Medicine has a program called ACTOR that actively takes postdocs, and these postdocs actually go sit in teaching faculty classroom spaces to just kind of observe. And if they're interested, they can actually develop content and teach a lecture in the faculty that are involved in this course. I'm not sure when, I think it's a rolling application to get into the ACTOR program. I'm actually not as familiar with that program, but I know some of my faculty colleagues are involved with it. This program I know a lot about, and this is the Rice University Center for Teaching Excellence. And this is open to not just Rice University, it is open to scholars, okay? So it's open to postdocs and research scientists over at the medical center as well. I'll show you some more information on that in a second. The other thing that you might be interested in, and this is for someone who maybe has some teaching under their belt, is that Rice also offers these first year writing intensive seminars. And I know you're thinking, okay, well, that's like English composition, not science. No, we have these quiz classes that focus on science. And in fact, one of my colleagues teaches a quiz class where she teaches the students PCR in this class, and they write about what they learn about PCR. So they've written these beautiful 10-page assignments on PCR and how it works. So they get that opportunity to write, but they're also learning some science. And so we're desperate for more people to teach STEM-facing quiz classes. So if you've had some teaching experience and you're ready to go all in, this might be an opportunity for you. But I want to show you a little bit more about our Center for Teaching Excellence. They have a lot of great programs that have just started. And again, they're open to the community. You may participate. And so the participation spans from just going to a workshop to learn about effective teaching to an actual course that you can take. So you can actually register for a series of courses and be immersed in learning how to teach. So these courses are over here on the right-hand side. I don't know if you can see that, it's the GCTL courses, but you can actually get a certificate. And so if you were thinking about going someplace where teaching is the mainstay of that position, having the certificate will go a long way for getting you that position, because you're like, yeah, I have some teaching experience, but I also have the certificate. And that will go a long way in your CV if you're interested in teaching professionally. This is the other thing that you can do. You can contact me and my friends. So these are, so my email is at the top. Please don't be shy. You're more than welcome to reach out to me if you want to learn more. But several of my colleagues would love to have guest lecturers, or just for any of you to come sit in their class to see what it's like to teach in a classroom. If you reach out to me and tell me a little bit about your interest, I can partner you with the right faculty member whose interests of what they're teaching will align with yours. One of my colleagues, Neela Lefelt, is desperate right now for somebody to come speak to her advanced cellular and molecular neuroscience course. So if you're a neuroscientist and you want to talk about neuroscience, Neela would like for you to contact her right now. This is an advanced course. This is senior level, and she just wants the students to meet researchers and hear about the research. So if you're a neuroscientist, please give Neela a holler. She would really appreciate it. My husband works at University of St. Thomas. That's Sheva Samin. They will do the same thing. They'll work with you. You can sit in one of their classes. University of St. Thomas is a minority serving institution. And so it's a really great immersion in that type of environment where they're working with underserved groups. And really great faculty over there. They would love to have you. And then my good friend Giselle Davis is an associate chair at Houston Community College, and she is always looking for adjuncts. So if you want to jump all in and teach a class, Giselle is the person to reach out to. So please feel free to email all these folks. They know that I'm doing this. You won't be surprising them. we're always happy to help because we had people help us on our journey, and we are, of course, willing to help others. So if I haven't convinced you enough, this is the last slide that I will show, and this is why I do this. The service is a lot. The meetings are a lot. The grading is a lot. It's a lot. It's a challenge, but this is why I love it. I got this email this week. It was very timely for this presentation, but this is from one of my students who I dearly loved. She wasn't sure she was gonna stay pre-med. She was thinking about maybe even leaving, but she just decided that she was gonna go all in. I had her in my immunology class, and she wrote me this really nice note earlier this week. This is why I do this, that I have these students reach back out to me and say, thank you, I have found my way. I am in a medical school program, or I'm in graduate school. I got this awesome job. And that's where I get my most satisfaction, is helping people get to where they need to be in their lives. I'm done talking, which is amazing because I just keep talking. Thank you all so much, and happy to have any questions if I left some time. Yes. I'll leave this here or here.
Is this one working? Yes. All right, so I guess we open it up now. Does anyone have any questions for our speaker? I'll start here just because she's closer.
Thank you for your great talk. I wanted to ask you, out of curiosity, is it recommended for a scientist or somebody in research to start teaching after a certain point in their career? Like, is it better for them to do that alongside their own research?
I don't think there's like a time requirement. It's just, I guess, the earlier you get into it, I guess it could open more doors for you. I mean, if you're really interested in just seeing what it's like, I would dabble in it, because it could be something that, you teach a class or classes and you're like, oh, okay, maybe this is not for me. I'm just going to focus all in on science. But no, it's unlike research where, there's that adage where if you leave research for a long time, it's really hard to come back. It's not the same for teaching. So you could, teach 1 year and then there'll be a 10-year gap, in your resume, and then get back into it. And there's no harm, no foul. They're gonna make you run all across the room.
Exactly.
Hey, so you kept mentioning about service as teaching faculty. I'm just a little curious because coming from, Baylor, where it's all graduate level, the service is teaching generally for those research-focused faculty.
Right.
So what does service look like as a teaching faculty?
Good question. So I use kind of service as a loose term. So I have, and it can be several different things, but service to Rice. So I have to do service for the institution and then my department. So for what I'm doing for service for the institution is I serve on university level committees. So I am on the parking committee, which is one of my services. Yes, which is funny because I ride my bike. So yeah, I am the bike rider on that parking committee. The other thing that I do service level at the university level is community outreach. So we have to have some sort of community engagement as teaching faculty members. So that can be many different things. It can be you go and give a public talk. It could be you bring some outside groups into Rice and do some sort of instruction with them. So it can take many different flavors, I guess. But on the department end of things, the same is true. I'm on, the undergraduate award committee. I'm also on our previously the DEI committees, now known as the CARE committee. So I serve on committees, but I also have to work on curriculum. And I'm also expected to do something with novel pedagogy. And so that's my service to the department.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish teaching was my service because I would be like, awesome. I've got nothing else to do today.
Hi there. Thank you so much for the talk. To kind of piggyback off the first question, there's always the like mantra in the back of my head that those who do teach, you know, the old stigma there.
Mhm.
Have you found in your experience that in academia there's any of that kind of lingering notion, maybe when applying for jobs at certain institutions, where maybe if you don't have a certain amount of research experience, you seem less valuable as a teacher, whereas I'm sure we've all had the experience that we've met fantastic researchers who make absolutely awful teachers. But does that really contribute to that at all?
It is there in the background. I think it is slowly diminishing. I know I'm being Zoom recorded, so I'm going to be careful with how I say this. So yes, there's some of the old guard, I'll just say that, and I'm just going to be real blunt, that see like teaching is you're a failed researcher, right? You didn't like doing research or you were bad at it, and so you're going to teach instead. But I can tell you for a fact, my teaching colleagues have published numerous papers, had great postdocs, and they realized, just like I did, that I want to teach. I want to inspire people to do more of this work. I don't want to worry about writing grants and just, you know, that the part of research that's not the research part, you know, the kind of the unfun part. And honestly, I think things are changing where it is being acknowledged that the teaching faculty bring incredible value to institutions, because we are doing something that a lot of the research faculty kind of can't do. And I'm not, you know, don't want to cast shade on anyone, but I know molecular biology, but I can explain to an undergraduate student the nuances of that in a way that they understand, that some of my research colleagues might not be able to, because they're coming from it from such a top down. I enjoy it. I like the aha moment of a student recognizing the difference between the different types of cells, right? But that might be bothersome to someone that they're like, oh my gosh, why don't you know this? So I think things are changing, and at least at Rice, the teaching faculty are being acknowledged as a very, very important group of faculty that are on campus. And we now have a lot of the same benefits that the research faculty do. Previously, the research faculty would get 6 months of parental leave, but the teaching faculty did not. And Rice has realized that that's not cool. We want to keep these people, right? Because they teach all of our classes. And so we are now equitable there. So I think things are changing, and universities are acknowledging that teaching faculty are incredibly important, because we're bringing in the undergraduates, and the undergraduates are paying for the institution's existence. And I think they're finally realizing that. Yeah, research faculty are bringing in lots of money, right? They are with their grants, but we are bringing in money through the students that are coming to our schools. So things are changing. Good question. I hope I didn't make anybody mad. She's making someone else ask a question. He's gonna ask a question. The guy I don't like.
You can go first because of proximity. Yeah.
Thanks for the great talk. I actually wanted to ask you about your Arboretum work,
Sure.
since you're here. And I've noticed there's a lot of, because I often use it as a break walking around a lot of Rice's campus. And I've noticed there's been a lot of construction, not construction, but just like both removal of trees and bushes, and then also now planting of trees and bushes. And I'm wondering what the long-term plan for that is.
Yeah. I can answer you to the best of my abilities. Yeah. So what is happening? We actually, not to get too much into the weeds, haha, with what's going on in the Arboretum, but we did not have, I am the first director. So I'm making the job. And so the Arboretum was trucking along, doing its thing, happy for years until we had a drought and then a major freeze and then a hurricane and another major freeze. And so we got to the point where there needs to be more oversight with the management of the Arboretum. So I now exist. So all the chopping that you're seeing over there, we had some pretty diseased trees that were not in good shape, that were getting to the point where they were getting dangerous. And so that's why we're getting some of those trees removed. But yes, because we are an Arboretum, we have to replace those trees. So what I'm actually working on is adding more diversity to our Arboretum. So, 95% of our Arboretum are live oaks, which are beautiful and awesome, but it is a plant pathogen disaster waiting to happen, because if we get a nasty strain of oak wilt that rolls in, now rice has no trees. So what we're working towards is planting for more diversity. I'm also working on putting some signage up. We have some really cool trees on campus that nobody knows about. We have a tree that flew in space. We have a moon tree. We have a tree that was planted by Colin Powell. That's pretty cool. We have the champion post oak in Harris County on our campus. So we have some really cool stuff. Nobody knows about it. So I'm trying to elevate that status through signage and other initiatives. But we're also, like I mentioned, going to try to recapitulate the original ecosystem that was there. So restoring a prairie and a pond. Again, to elevate the status of the arbor to allow it to be a research space. So students can go out there and do work. And for people like yourself that do stress relief by walking through our campus, you'll have an amazing place to walk through. So health and well-being is also very important for me. And so that's why we want to improve the space also.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Get your steps in. Get your steps in.
Okay, so you mentioned previously, like whenever you were comparing like graduate teaching and then like four-year institution teaching, that there was an expectation to have some experience there. But also, like if you get hired as a research faculty, they often do teach, like you said, like a course.
Yes.
Does like teaching experience affect your like competitiveness as a research faculty position?
I don't think it will.
No? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it will. They do. I mean, it would be nice if you had some teaching, just so they say, oh yeah, this person can teach. But I don't think that's going to make or break it. Like they're going to look at your publication record and, all of the things that, we look at as for research scientists. And that's going to be the main thing that they'll recruit you based on.
Thank you.
But having a little experience will help you make that transition, because that's where research faculty kind of get into like a conundrum, is like, oh, I've never taught before. Now I have to teach this class. Ooh, and you're kind of learning as the first time that you do it.
Hi, thank you for your talk. So my undergraduate degree is actually in community education, so I'm very glad to be here. But I have sort of a particular interest in like course-based undergraduate research experiences. So I'm just wondering kind of two prongs of that. One, how are those viewed among teaching faculty and among kind of your colleagues? And then two, how do you see the teaching of those courses split up? Is that mostly research faculty, mostly teaching, 50-50?
Great question. So we do apply cures in a lot of our teaching, in a lot of the courses that we teach. And believe it or not, the teaching faculty run those cure-based courses. The research faculty do not. The research faculty usually come in, they're like, here's the paper that I wrote, read this, let's talk about it and break it down, which is fine, right? That's a great way to learn science. But we do a lot of the experiential learning where the students are actually doing authentic research in our courses. And so at Rice, we actually have a great partnership between the research faculty and our training lab. So that experimental biosciences class that I mentioned, my colleague, Jamie Kentonese, runs the majority of those courses. He actually reaches out to the research faculty about some basic question that research faculty member doesn't really want to put a graduate student on. but is curious, they want to screen something or do something that takes a long time, but it's kind of low key and not super important for the next grant, he'll give that project to Jamie. The undergraduates in that class will do it. And so they're actually helping to do authentic research that they'll then turn around and take that data and give it back to the research faculty member. So we have a really good system set up at Rice to do that exact thing.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all. Thank you so much.